What if the life you built on control shattered in an instant? What if a ghost from your past held the key to a future you never imagined? Stay tuned to uncover this incredible story of second chances and hidden truths. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more captivating stories. David Sterling had meticulously constructed his entire life on a foundation of absolute control. He was a titan of the real estate world, a man who anticipated not just every outcome, but every variable, every risk, never allowing the messy interference of emotion to cloud his razor-sharp logic. But all it took was one seemingly ordinary afternoon, one quiet arrival at a newly acquired property, for his perfectly ordered world to violently shatter around him. The moment he walked into the gleaming lobby of the Grandview Hotel, his newest acquisition in Chicago, he froze. Standing near the front desk, her dark hair pulled back in a professional bun, wearing a hotel uniform, was a woman he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Maria Rodriguez, the woman he'd once planned to marry before his abrupt, unexplained departure from the city, the woman he'd searched for but never found. And as she stood there, her expression carefully neutral, her voice steady despite the tremor David instantly recognized, whispering his name like a ghost materializing from the past. He knew with a chilling certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. His attention, however, was suddenly drawn to a small figure at a nearby table. A young girl, perhaps 9 years old, was meticulously arranging fresh flower stems in a vase. There was something about her deliberate movements, the careful, focused way she handled each delicate bloom, that felt strangely familiar, reminding him, inexplicably, of himself as a boy, lost for hours building intricate models. Then, as if sensing his gaze, she looked up, and the world stopped spinning. Those eyes, that startling, vivid blue, the distinctive Sterling family blue, like sunlight filtered through ice. Eyes he saw every morning in his own reflection. Eyes that could belong to no one else. Isabella, Maria called sharply, her voice tight, her professional mask cracking slightly as she saw where David's gaze was fixed. Sweetheart, please take those flowers to Mrs. Davison's office now. The girl nodded, those incredible blue eyes stealing one more curious, assessing glance at David before she carefully picked up the vase and hurried away, disappearing down a hallway. How old is she? David's voice was barely above a whisper, raw with a sudden, terrifying premonition. The question ripped from him before he could control it. Mr. Sterling, I'm sure you'd like to see the executive suite. The staff has been preparing for your arrival. If you'll follow me. Maria gestured toward the elevators, her voice formal, ignoring his question completely, attempting to steer him away from the undeniable truth that was unfolding. But David caught her arm, his fingers closing around her wrist, his carefully constructed control dissolving around him. Maria, how old? She pulled away from his touch as if burned, her composure fracturing completely for a split second, her dark eyes flashing with a pain he didn't understand. 9. She's 9 years old. The timing was unmistakable, a cold, hard punch to the gut. He'd left Chicago nearly a decade ago. Is she? The question hung in the air, the most important question of his life. A question she had already answered with her eyes, with her age, with the very color of her daughter's gaze. This isn't the place, David. Maria cut him off, regaining her professional facade with a visible effort. I have a job to do and you have a hotel to inspect. Our past. It doesn't belong here. Now, if you'll excuse me. She turned and walked quickly towards the front desk, leaving him standing alone in the gleaming, indifferent lobby, his world reduced to a single, devastating realization. The little girl with his eyes, the daughter he never knew, was real. The mystery of her existence, her sudden appearance, threatened to consume him. Hours later, after a mechanical blur of a tour through his newest acquisition, details of occupancy rates and renovation costs meaningless sounds in his ears, David sat alone in the vast, impersonal penthouse suite, the city lights a distant blur below him. His hand trembled slightly as his finger traced Maria's employment history in the hotel's digital files. Starting as a room attendant nearly 9 years ago, promotions every year, glowing performance reviews, Then he found what he was looking for, the piece of information that confirmed the impossible, the piece of information she hadn't hidden in the digital age. Her emergency contact form listed Isabella Rodriguez as her daughter. And under father? Not listed. A sharp knock at the door interrupted his drowning thoughts, pulling him back to the devastating present. Maria stood in the hallway, no longer in her uniform, her expression carefully blank, refusing to step inside the luxurious suite that represented his world, the world he had chosen over her. "Your message said it was urgent, Mr. Sterling," she said formally, her voice flat. "9 years, Maria," David said, his voice raw with pain, ignoring her formality. 9 years I didn't know I had a daughter. 9 years of her life I missed. 10 years you were gone without a word, David," she countered instantly, her voice sharp with a bitterness that had clearly festered over a decade. 10 years I had no idea where you were, if you were okay, if you even remembered me. I tried to find you when I discovered I was pregnant. I called your father's office. He told me you were engaged, that you were starting a new life building hotels across Asia. He made it very clear you wanted nothing to do with me or my situation. David's face drained of color, the blood rushing from his head as his father's manipulative shadow fell over the devastating truth. "My father, he told you that? I never knew. Maria, I swear, I would have come back immediately if I'd known about you, about the baby. I would have dropped everything. Would you?" Maria's voice was laced with profound skepticism, with the deep, aching wound of his sudden disappearance. "Forgive me if I find that hard to believe, David." The ambitious Alexander Reed, the man who lived and breathed global domination, giving up his grand plans, his inheritance, his entire future, for a pregnant girlfriend? I was 26 years old, David. Alone, terrified, and trying to finish school while working full-time. Your father, he found me. He threatened to destroy my parents' small business abroad if I kept trying to contact you, if I caused a scandal that could hurt his reputation, his deals. What was I supposed to do? David stepped back as if she had struck him. The sheer magnitude of what had happened, of the manipulation and deceit that had shaped both their lives for a decade, hitting him with brutal force. What did you do?" "I believed him, David," Maria said, her voice soft with a lingering vulnerability that tore at his heart. "I believed that you had moved on, that you had chosen your empire over me. And I was scared. Scared for my parents, scared for myself, scared for the baby. So I stopped trying to find you. I disappeared just like you did. Does she know about me?" The question was tentative, fragile. "She knows her father lives far away," Maria replied, her voice carefully neutral again. "That's all she's ever known. That he builds beautiful things somewhere across the ocean." "I want to meet her," David said, his voice firm with a sudden, fierce determination that surprised even himself. "Properly, as her father." Maria shook her head, stepping further back into the hallway, the distance between them a physical manifestation of the years they had lost. "You can't just walk into her life after 9 years and announce you're her father, David. She's not some business acquisition you can just claim. She's a little girl who's only ever known life with her mother. It doesn't work like that." "She has my eyes, Maria," David said softly, compelled by the undeniable truth of Isabella's gaze. "Those blue eyes, they're mine. They're Sterling eyes." "Yes," Maria agreed, her voice breaking slightly before she regained her composure, the bitterness returning. "Every single day for the past 9 years, I've looked into those eyes and remembered you, David. Remembered what we had, and what I thought you chose to leave behind." She took a deep breath. "If you want to know her, if you want to be in her life, it has to be slow, David. On my terms. And you have to prove to me that you're not going to disappear again." "I'm not leaving Chicago again, Maria," David stated, his voice unwavering. "Not now. Not ever. My life is here now. You and Isabella are here. Your global empire might have something to say about that, Mr. Sterling," Maria countered, a skeptical, challenging glint in her dark eyes. David's jaw tightened, the old pride surfacing, But it was different now, tempered by the raw, painful discovery of his daughter. I built that empire, Maria. It works for me. I don't work for it. My priorities have changed. He looked at her directly, searching her face for any sign that she believed him, any hint of the woman he had loved. They stood in silence, the weight of 9 years, 1,000 unspoken words, and a lifetime of deceit hanging heavy between them. The mystery of their separation, the secret of Isabella's existence, and the uncertainty of their future intertwined into a complex knot. I have documentation, Maria finally said, breaking the silence, her voice businesslike, a stark contrast to the raw emotion that had just passed between them. Birth certificate, photos, medical records, school reports, everything proving she's yours. You can't deny her, David. I wouldn't ever, he whispered, the thought unthinkable. I never kept her a secret because I wanted to hurt you. David, Maria continued, her voice softer now, explaining the hidden years. After your father told me you were gone, engaged, starting over, I just eventually stopped believing you'd ever come back. I stopped believing in the possibility of US. And now I have, David said, his voice determined, filled with a fierce, newfound purpose. I missed 9 years of her life. I won't miss another day. I won't let my father's lies steal another moment. Maria studied him, searching for the passionate, reckless young man she had fallen in love with in this polished, powerful stranger. Could he truly mean it? Could he change the trajectory of his life for a child he had just met, for a past he had left behind? Tomorrow, she said finally, laying out her terms, her voice firm. Breakfast here in the hotel restaurant. You can meet her, again, as the owner of the hotel. Nothing more. Just, Mr. Sterling. Nothing more until I'm certain, truly certain, you're staying. For good. As she turned to leave, disappearing back into the hallway, a desperate, hopeful thought struck David. Maria, wait. She paused, turning back, a question in her eyes. Does she like development? Building things? Like model airplanes? Or maybe tree houses? A small, sad, incredibly beautiful smile crossed Maria's face. A smile that hinted at the woman he had lost, the woman he desperately wanted to find again. She designs model airplanes more elaborate than some of your projects, David. Spends hours on them. Gets that from you, I suppose. The mind for structure, for design. Her smile faded slightly. But her heart, David? Her capacity for love, her resilience. That's all her own. And mine. Maria didn't respond further, simply walking away, leaving David standing alone in the silent hallway, wondering how he could possibly build a bridge across the vast, aching chasm of time, deceit, and hurt that separated him from the daughter he never knew he had, from the family he never knew was waiting for him. Can a bridge be built across 9 years of lost time and heartbreaking secrets? Will David's daughter accept the father she never knew? If this story has you hooked, hit that like button and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Sunlight streamed through the hotel restaurant windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, as David arrived early the next morning. He spotted Maria and Isabella at a quiet corner table, the girl drawing intently on a napkin, her brow furrowed in concentration, while her mother watched her with a mixture of love and caution. Good morning, David said, approaching their table with careful, measured steps, unsure of how to bridge the distance, the history, the revelation. Isabella looked up, those startling blue eyes, his eyes, widening with recognition as she saw him. The hotel owner. You're the hotel owner, she said matter-of-factly, her voice clear and confident for a 9-year-old. That's right, David said, a genuine smile forming, feeling a strange mix of nerves and exhilaration. I'm Alexander Reed. He extended his hand, and she shook it with surprising formality, her small grip firm. I'm Isabella Rodriguez, she replied. I'm 9.5. David smiled, a deeper, more relaxed smile this time, taking the seat Maria gestured to, across from them. What are you drawing, Isabella? Isabella slid the napkin across the table toward him. It's a better lobby for your hotel. See, the check-in desk should be over here instead, so people can see the view when they arrive. And there should be a comfy reading corner here. David studied the surprisingly sophisticated sketch, the logical layout, the thoughtful details. He was genuinely impressed. You're absolutely right, Isabella. That's much better than our current layout. You have a real eye for design. Maria watched them cautiously, a small, unreadable smile playing on her lips. Isabella loves designing spaces. She rearranges her bedroom furniture at least once a month. And her model airplanes, they have to be structurally perfect. Mum says I get bored too easily, Isabella added, returning to her drawing with intense focus. I was the same way as a kid, David said, feeling a startling connection to this little girl. My father used to find me rebuilding the treehouse every summer. I always thought I could make it better. Do you still build things? Isabella asked, glancing up at him. Hotels, mostly, David replied, the grand scale suddenly feeling less significant than the simple act of creating something tangible, something real. But yes, Isabella, I still love creating spaces, building things. The conversation flowed more naturally than any of them expected. An easy rhythm settling between David and Isabella, with Maria observing, occasionally interjecting. They talked about model airplanes, about the best materials for building things, about her favorite subjects in school. When Isabella excused herself to the restroom, clutching her napkin design, David turned to Maria, his heart full. She's incredible, Maria. Truly remarkable. You've done an amazing job raising her. Maria's expression softened slightly, some of the guardedness fading. It wasn't easy, David, but we managed. My parents helped a lot until they moved back to Peru 6 years ago. It was just us after that. I want to know everything, Maria, David said, leaning forward, the urgency in his voice palpable. About these years I've missed. About her life. Please. Mr. Sterling? A hotel employee interrupted apologetically, looking flustered. I'm sorry to interrupt, but your brother is on the phone. He says it's urgent. David sighed, the intrusion of his old life into this fragile new moment unwelcome. He excused himself briefly, stepping away from the table to take the call. When he returned a few minutes later, his expression had hardened, the easy warmth replaced by the familiar, cold mask of the businessman. Business calls, Maria said knowingly, stating the obvious, the subtle skepticism back in her voice. Always? David confirmed, running a hand through his hair, the weight of his other world pressing down on him. Edward is having fits about me extending my stay in Chicago. Apparently, my presence is required elsewhere. Isabella returned then, and they finished breakfast amicably, the easy connection returning, though a subtle tension lingered in the air, a reminder of the conflicting worlds David inhabited. When they parted ways, David handed Maria his business card. Not the hotel's, but a small, plain white card with only his name and a phone number. My personal number, he said quietly, his gaze earnest, a silent plea in his eyes. I'd like permission to see Isabella again, Maria, and maybe we could talk more, about everything, when you're ready. Later that evening, after putting Isabella to bed, Maria opened her apartment door to find David waiting in the hallway, looking tired but determined, a thick manila envelope in his hand. You said you wanted to know everything, Maria, he said, stepping inside when she opened the door wider, placing the envelope on the coffee table. Birth certificate, medical records, school reports, photos. It's all here. David emptied the contents reverently, his movements slow and careful, as if handling something infinitely precious. He picked up the birth certificate first. Isabella Eliana Rodriguez. Mother, Maria Sofia Rodriguez. Father, not listed. A familiar ache tightened in his chest. Why didn't you put my name? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Looking up at Maria, who sat across from him on the sofa, her expression unreadable. Maria sighed, the sound heavy with the burden she had carried for years. By the time she was born, David, I believed you'd chosen your future, your family's expectations, your empire, over us. Your father was very convincing, David. He told me you were engaged, that you never wanted to see me again. He made sure I believed you had moved on completely. Howard Sterling, David muttered, his voice bitter, picking up a photo of newborn Isabella, a tiny bundle wrapped in a hospital blanket. Master manipulator. I should have been there, Maria. I should have been there for her birth. For you. Yes, David. Maria agreed, her voice soft but firm. You should have. But you weren't. And I was alone. David looked up sharply, pain and frustration in his eyes. Not by choice, Maria. Not my choice. Then tell me what happened, David? Maria said, challenging him, the years of unanswered questions finally demanding to be heard. Tell me why the man who promised to love me forever left for a weekend business trip and never came back. Why you disappeared without a single word. David set down the photos, running a hand over his face. The full weight of his father's betrayal, his own perceived failure, crushing him. My father. He called me to Washington, D.C., claiming he was ill. Said he needed me to come home immediately. When I arrived, he introduced me to Charlotte Beaumont, the daughter of his biggest potential investor, a man whose company our family business desperately needed to merge with. He'd arranged for us to be married, Maria, a business merger disguised as a wedding. Maria's face paled, her eyes widening in shock. An arranged marriage? The mystery of his departure was beginning to unravel, revealing a truth far more complex than simple abandonment. Of course not, I didn't agree. David's voice was indignant. I told him I was in love with you, that I was going back to Chicago to propose. That's when he showed me the file. What file? A complete investigation into your family, Maria, David explained, the memory still sickening. Your father's business debts abroad, your mother's complex immigration issues. He threatened to expose everything. To have your parents' business ruined, their livelihoods destroyed, to call in every single one of your father's loans. Loans Howard secretly held. He said he would destroy your entire family, Maria, everything you cared about unless I agreed to his terms. Unless I left Chicago and agreed to marry Charlotte Beaumont. Maria's face was stark white now, her eyes filled with horror. So you left, without a word, to protect me? To protect my family? I thought I was protecting you, Maria. David's voice broke, the pain of that impossible choice as real now as it had been a decade ago. I thought it was the only way to keep you and your family safe from him. I did go to Asia with Charlotte under my father's watchful eye, but I never went through with the marriage. I fought him, Maria. I built my own success away from his influence, but by the time I finally broke free, years had passed. I tried to find you. I hired investigators, but you'd moved, changed numbers. It was like you'd vanished. I moved 6 times those first few years, David, Maria admitted, her voice quiet, revealing her own struggle. Working whatever jobs I could while finishing school, trying to build a life for myself and the baby. Your father's monthly checks helped. My father sent you money? David interrupted, shocked. Not for me, for Isabella, Maria clarified. He called it compensation. I never wanted to take it. David, not a cent, but with a baby, and trying to get by. She shrugged, the memory painful. They stopped when she turned 6. I assumed he'd decided he'd paid enough for his son's mistake. She was never a mistake, Maria, David said firmly, his gaze unwavering, a promise in his eyes. Never. Maria met his gaze, a slow, sad smile forming. No, David. She wasn't. They sat in silence, the years between them filled with the echoes of manipulation, misunderstanding, and impossible choices. The mystery of their separation, the heartbreak of their past, finally laid bare between them. What do we do now, David? Maria finally asked, the question hanging heavy in the air, the uncertainty of their future stretching before them. I want to be her father, Maria. Really be her father? David said, his voice filled with a fierce, undeniable longing that surprised even himself. And your life? Your company? The hotels around the world that need the great David Sterling. Maria challenged gently, the skepticism still present. I've spent 9 years building an empire, Maria. A global one. What's the point if I have no one to share it with? He leaned forward, his gaze earnest, revealing a dream he had held onto even in the darkest times. I'm buying my family's old mountain property, the abandoned lodge there, outside of Chicago. I'm staying here, Maria. I'm staying in Chicago. Maria looked skeptical, her dark eyes searching his. Until the next big opportunity calls, David? Until your father, or Edward, demands your attention elsewhere. This is my opportunity, Maria, David insisted, his voice firm, filled with conviction. Making things right, building a life here, with you, with Isabella. He picked up a small school photo of Isabella from the scattered documents, her blue eyes, his eyes shining out at him. She deserves to know her father, Maria, not the ghost of a man who lives far away. And I deserve a chance to know my daughter, to be a part of her life, our lives. Maria stood, gathering the photos and documents slowly, deliberately. Take these, David. Learn about her. Learn everything you can. She met his gaze, her expression serious, laying down her final, non-negotiable term. Learn, but understand this. If you come into her life, if you step across this line, you don't get to leave again. She's not a project you can abandon when it gets difficult, David. She's not something you can walk away from when the business calls. I know, David said, his voice quiet but unwavering, a promise etched in his soul. As Maria reached the door, she turned back, a lingering question in her eyes. Your father may have manipulated us both, David. He may have forced you into an impossible corner. But you still made your choice 9 years ago. You still walked away. And I'm making a different one now, Maria, David replied, meeting her gaze directly, the determination clear in his voice. A choice I should have been free to make back then. I choose my family this time. I choose you and Isabella. After she left, the quiet click of the door echoing in the vast suite, David spent hours poring over every photo, every report card, every crayon drawing, trying to piece together the life he had missed. In the margin of one school assignment about family, Isabella had drawn a tall stick figure with a question mark for a face. Underneath, in hesitant childish script, she'd written, My dad lives far away, but Mom says he builds beautiful things. David wiped tears from his eyes, the raw emotion overwhelming him. Not anymore, Isabella, he whispered to the empty room, clutching the drawing to his chest. Not far away anymore. I'm here now. I'm staying. The mystery of his absence was over, but the mystery of how to build a future remained. What about this one? David held up a small model bridge constructed from popsicle sticks and string. Clearly Isabella's work, one of the treasures from the envelope. Isabella, perched on a stool beside him in the hotel's empty conference room, surrounded by building materials, wood, glue, wire, shook her head decisively, her 9-year-old brow furrowed in concentration. The support beams are all wrong, Dad. It'll collapse if you put any weight on it. See, they sat surrounded by the organized chaos of their impromptu architecture workshop, set up in the hotel's unused conference room, a quiet, private space David had arranged. It had been 4 weeks since their first tentative breakfast, 4 weeks of carefully supervised visits at parks, museums, now these building sessions that had quickly become the highlight of David's life, and clearly, Isabella's too. Show me how you'd fix it, Isabella, David suggested, genuinely eager to learn, handing her the model. Isabella took the bridge, studying it critically, her small hands manipulating the sticks with a surprising understanding of structure before adding cross beams with practiced precision. There. Now it's stable. Can hold weight. You're absolutely right, David said, genuinely impressed, watching her work with a mixture of pride and awe. That's brilliant, Isabella. Where did you learn structural engineering? YouTube, Isabella replied with a shrug, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Mom says I watch too many building videos, but I want to design real buildings someday. Like you, Dad. From across the room, Maria watched their interaction. Leaning against the wall, a complex mixture of emotions playing on her face. David had been true to his word so far, showing up consistently for these scheduled visits, always respectful of the boundaries she'd set, never pushing too hard, never demanding too much. Isabella was clearly thriving under his attention, blossoming with confidence and a newfound excitement for her building passion. But Maria couldn't silence the voice in her head, the lingering fear born of a decade of abandonment, warning her that it couldn't last, that his demanding world, his powerful family, would eventually pull him away again. "She's remarkable," a voice said, startling Maria from her thoughts. A man in an expensive, sharply tailored suit had entered the room unannounced, his presence immediately filling the space with a cold, unsettling energy. "I'm sorry, this is a private event," Maria said, stepping forward protectively, blocking his path. The man smiled coldly, a look that didn't reach his eyes. "Marcus Sterling, Alexander's brother and chief operating officer." He extended a hand, which Maria reluctantly shook, his grip firm and assessing. "So this is the domestic situation keeping my brother from his responsibilities." His gaze swept over the building materials, the models, the father and daughter engrossed in their work, a look of thinly veiled contempt on his face. "Marcus!" David spotted his brother and his expression hardened instantly, the warmth he had shared with Isabella vanishing. He walked over quickly, an unwelcome tension rising between the brothers. "What are you doing here? I told you I'd call you back about the Singapore project." "When, Alex? When?" Marcus hissed, his voice low and sharp, clearly furious. "It's been a month of, I'll call you back. The board is asking questions. Our investors are nervous. You can't just disappear off the face of the earth." David guided his brother towards the door, trying to keep the confrontation private, away from Isabella and Maria. "Isabella," he called over his shoulder, forcing a calm tone. "Why don't you show your mom the bridge you fixed? I'll be right back." In the hallway, the brothers faced off, the simmering tension between them erupting. "This is what's keeping you in Chicago?" Marcus demanded, his voice dripping with disdain. "Playing daddy to some hotel maid's kid? Are you serious, Alex?" David's expression hardened to steel, his eyes blazing with cold fury. "That hotel maid is Maria Rodriguez, general manager in training, and that kid is my daughter Marcus." Marcus's eyes widened in genuine shock, the condescension momentarily replaced by stunned disbelief. You're what?" "My daughter," David repeated firmly, his voice unwavering. "The daughter father made sure I never knew about. For 9 years, Marcus. 9 years I missed. 9 years of her life." "Alex, be reasonable." Marcus lowered his voice, attempting a more pragmatic approach, though the condescension was still evident. "You can't just upend everything your entire life for a child you just met. How do you even know she's yours? Are you sure about this?" "Look at her eyes, Marcus," David said, his voice rough with emotion, gesturing back towards the conference room. "She's a Sterling, through and through. There's no denying her." Marcus glanced back through the door's window at Isabella, still showing the bridge model to Maria. He paused, then exhaled, the hard lines of his face softening almost imperceptibly. "Fine, Alex. She's yours. Set up a trust fund. Hire her the best tutors, the best nannies. Give her everything money can buy. But you need to come back to work. The Sterling Hotel Group doesn't run itself. Father is losing patience." "I'm not abandoning her again, Marcus," David said, his voice final. "Then bring them with you," Marcus argued, throwing his hands up in frustration. "Set them up in London or Tokyo. Buy them a mansion. Problem solved. You can see her whenever you're not in meetings." David shook his head, the thought of uprooting Maria and Isabella for his convenience unthinkable now. Maria has built a life here in Chicago. Isabella has her school, her friends, her routine. I'm not pulling her out of her world for mine. "Then what is your plan, Alex?" Marcus demanded, his voice rising again. To play happy family while our company falls apart? While father has a stroke worrying about you. The company is fine, Marcus. David countered, his own voice rising to match his brother's intensity. I've been working remotely every single night after Isabella goes to bed. I'm handling everything. Marcus stepped closer, his gaze sharp, probing. This isn't like you, Alex. The brother I know. The man who built an empire. He wouldn't let sentiment cloud his judgment like this. This isn't the Alex I know. David met his gaze steadily, a new, quiet confidence in his eyes. Maybe, Marcus, he said, his voice low and firm. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think you do. The mystery of his past actions was finally being clarified, revealing a hidden part of himself. Back inside the conference room, Maria helped Isabella gather her building materials, her mind reeling from the tense exchange she had partially overheard. Did you have fun today, sweetheart? Isabella nodded enthusiastically, her blue eyes shining. Yes, Alexander says I have a natural talent for design, and he's going to bring blueprints of a real hotel next time, to show me how they work. Maria forced a smile, her heart aching with a familiar mixture of hope and fear. That sounds wonderful, honey. David returned then, his expression clearing immediately as he focused on Isabella again, the tension from the conversation with Marcus melting away. Great job today, architect. You really are brilliant. Same time next week. Isabella nodded eagerly, already bouncing towards the elevator, clutching her latest model airplane. After Isabella disappeared around the corner, heading for the lobby where a staff member would walk her up to her mother's apartment, Maria held David back. Your brother doesn't approve of this arrangement, David. I heard some of that. David sighed, running a hand through his hair, the stress of the confrontation returning. Marcus doesn't get a vote, Maria. This is between us. This is about Isabella. Is it? Maria challenged gently, her dark eyes searching his. Because it seems like your other life is catching up to you, David. Your family, your company. They want you back. They don't understand this. David took a deep breath, his gaze earnest, filled with a resolve she hadn't seen in him for years, perhaps ever. Maria, please. I am committed to being here. For Isabella. And for you, if you'll let me. I'm not going anywhere. The mystery of his commitment was still unfolding. 3 days later, Maria was summoned to an unused office on the hotel's top floor. Marcus Sterling sat behind the large desk, a folder open before him, his face grim. Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for coming, Marcus said, his voice formal and cold. Mr. Sterling said it was about my promotion to general manager in training. Maria replied cautiously, her instincts on high alert. She had worked tirelessly for this opportunity, a chance to finally advance her career, to provide a better life for Isabella. In a way, Marcus said, his smile chilling. He slid a single check across the polished desk. $1 million, Ms. Rodriguez. Tax-free. Enough to start fresh, anywhere you'd like. Far from Chicago. Far from my brother. Maria stared at the check, the impossible sum, the blatant offer. Her blood ran cold. You're bribing me to leave. I'm offering you a better opportunity than playing house with my brother, Marcus corrected, his voice sharp, contemptuous. A clean break. For everyone. Alexander doesn't belong in Chicago, Ms. Rodriguez. He's needed internationally. He's needed for the future of the Sterling Hotel Group. Have you considered that he might need his daughter, Mr. Sterling? Maria countered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Marcus leaned forward, his gaze intense, dismissive. Ms. Rodriguez, be practical. Alexander built a global empire before he even knew this child existed. Do you really think he'll be content playing weekend father to a child he just met? This infatuation will pass. The novelty will wear off, and you'll be left picking up the pieces. Again. Maria pushed the check back across the desk with a firm hand, her resolve hardening to steel. Isabella is not negotiable, Mr. Sterling. Not for $1 million, not for 10 million. My daughter is not a price you can pay. 2 million, then, Marcus said instantly, not missing a beat. Final offer. A very generous offer, Ms. Rodriguez. More than you could earn in a lifetime. Maria stood up, her chair scraping against the floor, her voice ringing with quiet dignity and unwavering determination. Mr. Sterling, your brother may have missed 9 years of Isabella's life, and that was a tragedy. But it wasn't entirely his choice. I won't rob him of another day, not now that he's here. And I certainly won't do it for money. Marcus's expression darkened, his eyes cold and hard. You're making a mistake, Ms. Rodriguez. A grave mistake. Alexander is a Sterling first, a father second. When he remembers that, and he will remember that, don't say I didn't warn you. This will only end in heartbreak. Later that night, after putting Isabella to bed, Maria found David waiting outside her apartment building. His shoulders were slumped, his face etched with worry. I heard about Marcus's visit, he said, his voice low, apologetic. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that, Maria. He had no right. How did you find out? Maria asked, surprised. Hotel staff talk, David replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. My world is complicated, Maria. Messy. He took a deep breath. I've been thinking about what you said the other day, about my other life catching up to me. You were right. Maria's heart sank, a familiar cold dread washing over her. Had he already decided? So you're leaving, David? No, Maria, David said firmly, meeting her gaze, his eyes earnest, filled with a profound resolve. I'm not leaving. I'm changing my life to fit you and Isabella. I'm bringing my world here to Chicago. To you. He handed her a sleek, professionally designed brochure. My family's old mountain property outside of Chicago. The abandoned lodge there. I'm renovating it completely, turning it into a world-class boutique hotel. I'm calling it the Summit Lodge. Maria stared at the brochure, at the artist's rendering of a stunning lodge nestled amongst trees, bathed in warm light. Why are you showing me this, David? Because I want you to run it, Maria, David said, his voice filled with conviction. As general manager, the head of everything, you've got the experience, the vision, the talent, more than anyone I know. And it would mean I could be close to Isabella, be a constant part of her life while also giving you the career opportunity you deserve. The one you've worked so hard for. His eyes were earnest, filled with a hope that mirrored her own, a hope she had almost extinguished. Maria studied the brochure, then looked up at him, stunned speechless by the magnitude of his offer, by the sheer, unwavering commitment in his eyes. Alexander, this is a chance for all of us, Maria, David finished, his voice gentle. A chance to build something new, here, in Chicago. No more conflict between my family and my work. They become the same thing. My family is my work now, building a life here, with you, with Isabella. He touched her hand hesitantly, his fingers warm against her skin. A reconnection across the years of separation. What do you say, Maria? Will you build this with me? Maria looked up at him, searching his face for any trace of the man who had abandoned her, the man she had feared for so long. Instead, she found only the David she had fallen in love with, passionate, determined, visionary, but tempered now by humility, by pain, by a profound love for the daughter they shared. I'd need to see the full business plan, David, she said finally, her voice trembling slightly, and discuss how this would affect Isabella's routine, her school, her life. David broke into a relieved smile, the tension draining from his face. Of course, Maria, whatever you need, we'll do this together, every step of the way. As they stood there, under the quiet glow of the streetlights, making plans to tour the property, neither of them noticed Marcus Sterling watching from a car parked across the street, his expression grim, his face illuminated by the cold glow of his phone screen as he made a call. Father, he said into the receiver, his voice low and urgent. We have a problem in Chicago. He's serious about this. It's time for Plan B. The mystery of the opposition they faced was just beginning. So this would be the main lobby, David said, his voice echoing slightly in the dusty, debris-filled space of the abandoned beachfront lodge. Sunlight streamed through broken windows, illuminating the once grand room, highlighting the decay and neglect of 30 years. We'll restore the original stone fireplace, but open up that wall completely for unobstructed ocean views. We can bring in local artisans to restore the wood carvings. Maria walked the perimeter, her eyes scanning the space, her mind already calculating renovation costs, structural challenges, design possibilities. The bones are good, David. Solid. But it's a massive project. How long has it been closed? Almost 30 years, David replied, looking around the room with a mixture of nostalgia and excitement. My grandfather built it back in the day. My father, he let it decay after the market crashed, never saw the value in it anymore. He wanted to tear it down, but I always felt it was a waste. David watched Maria's thoughtful assessment with admiration. Her practical expertise was the perfect complement to his grand vision. What do you think, Maria? Honestly, it's a massive undertaking, but the location, it's unbeatable. Right on the coast, stunning views. She ran her hand along a carved wooden banister, a ghost of its former grandeur. The Summit Lodge, she said softly, remembering the name from the brochure. David pointed through the broken windows to the rocky outcropping visible in the distance, crowned by an old, sturdy structure. The old summit post stood there for a century, guiding travelers safely through the mountains. I thought it was fitting. For a lodge, for a new beginning, a place of guidance, of homecoming. His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her look away. The unspoken history, the hope for a shared future, hanging in the air between them. Isabella darted into the room then, her sneakers kicking up dust, her blue eyes wide with excitement. Dad! Mom! There's a tower with a spiral staircase. Can I live there? Please. Maria laughed, the sound light and happy, a rare moment of pure joy amidst the stress. We're not living here, sweetheart. It's going to be a hotel, but we'll be here all the time, if you're the boss, right, Mom? Isabella looked between them, putting the pieces together with uncanny speed. Alexander said you'd be in charge of everything. We're still discussing the details, honey, Maria hedged, not wanting to get her hopes up too soon. David knelt to Isabella's level, his heart swelling with love and pride. What do you think of the place, Isabella? As our resident architectural expert. It needs a lot of work, Isabella declared seriously, surveying the dusty lobby with a critical eye. Like a lot of work, but it could be beautiful again, Dad. Really beautiful. Over the following weeks, the Summit Lodge renovation became their shared passion project. Maria's deep hotel management expertise, her practical insights into guest flow and operational needs, complemented David's grand vision for the design and scale. And Isabella, with her uncanny eye for detail and her boundless enthusiasm for building, offered surprisingly insightful suggestions about the children's areas, the family suites, and even the structural integrity of certain sections. They were building something together, piece by piece, a future forged from the wreckage of the past. One evening, as they reviewed blueprints sprawled across a makeshift table in the lodge's temporary site office, David watched Maria mark up plans with confident, precise strokes. Her passion for this project was as evident as his own. You're a natural at this, Maria, he observed, a genuine admiration in his voice. You don't just see the big picture. You understand every intricate detail. Turns out my business degree wasn't wasted after all, she replied with a small smile, a smile that held a hint of past pain. It would have been wasted if you'd stayed head of guest services, David said, his voice firm. You were meant for more. Why didn't you apply for management positions sooner? Before the grand view, Maria set down her pen, the smile fading. Single mother with no connections? Trying to finish school while working full-time? Most places wouldn't even look at my resume. They certainly wouldn't work around Isabella's schedule. Her school plays, doctor's appointments. I was lucky to get that job at the Grandview, David. It paid the bills and let me be there for her. Their loss, David said, his gaze unwavering. You're the most capable, the most dedicated, the most visionary person I've ever worked with, Maria, anywhere in the world. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the years apart seemed to dissolve, leaving only the recognition of two people who understood and respected each other on a profound level. Two people who were building not just a lodge, but a new foundation. David's phone shattered the silence with Marcus's distinctive, jarring ringtone. He glanced at the caller ID, a familiar wave of tension rising. "Ignore it," he said, reaching to silence the device, unwilling to let his brother's demands intrude on this rare moment of connection. "You should answer, David," Maria said, her voice quiet but firm, her gaze steady. "He's called 3 times tonight. It's not going away." David sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration, feeling the pull of his other world, the world Marcus represented. He stepped outside the temporary office, into the cool evening air, to take the call. Through the window, Maria could see his expression darkening, his gestures becoming more animated, the easy camaraderie replaced by the rigid posture of the CEO under fire. When he returned, his jaw was tight, his eyes cold steel. "Marcus is coming to Chicago tomorrow," he said, his voice clipped. "With father's concerns. The board's concerns. Apparently, I've gone rogue with company resources, using the Summit Lodge project as a personal piggy bank." "Is he right, David?" Maria asked, her voice quiet, searching his face for the truth. Is this project just about you? About making up for the past? About defying your father?" "It's my company, Maria," David retorted, his voice rising slightly. "My family name on the buildings. I should have anticipated this. Marcus has never understood anything beyond profit margins, beyond the bottom line. He doesn't understand this." He gestured vaguely around the dusty office, encompassing the blueprints, the building materials, their shared passion. Maria studied him, her expression thoughtful. Maybe we should slow down, David. If this is causing problems, if it's putting you at risk with your family, your company." "No, Maria," David interrupted firmly, his gaze unwavering. "The Summit Lodge isn't negotiable. This project, this is about building something real, something that matters. Here, with you, with Isabella." He looked at her, his voice softening. "This project is my life now, Maria. More than any hotel in Asia, more than any deal in London." The mystery of his true priorities was becoming clearer. Later that week, Maria sat in her favorite cafe, the aroma of coffee and pastry filling the air, sharing her anxieties with her best friend, Sophia, who owned the bakery next door. "Girl, you're playing with fire," Sophia warned, stirring her coffee slowly, her gaze direct. "Working with your ex is complicated enough without adding your daughter and a multi-million-dollar project into the mix. It's a recipe for heartbreak, Maria." "It's not like that, Sophia," Maria insisted, though even to her own ears, it sounded like a weak defense. "It's strictly professional. We're building a hotel together." "Professional?" Sophia raised a skeptical eyebrow, a knowing smile on her lips. "Those bedroom eyes he gives you when he thinks no one's looking? The way you light up when he talks about design? Honey, that's not professional. And Isabella told my son that Night Alex is at your apartment till past her bedtime most nights. Working on blueprints," Maria clarified, her cheeks flushing. Sophia drawled, clearly unconvinced. "And rebuilding something else, I bet." Maria couldn't deny the shift in her relationship with David. The past few months had been a whirlwind, the initial shock, the painful truths, the hesitant steps towards building a connection with Isabella, and then, unexpectedly, the undeniable pull of working together, of sharing a vision, a passion for bringing the Summit Lodge back to life. It had reminded her of why she had fallen in love with him all those years ago. His intensity, his vision, his unexpected kindness, the way he listened to her ideas as equals, respecting her expertise. "Isabella adores him, Sophia," Maria admitted, the raw vulnerability in her voice. "She calls him Dad now, naturally, like it's the most obvious thing in the world. She asked me yesterday if Alexander If David was her father. For real. Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. What did you say, Maria? That we would talk about her father soon. Maria sighed, the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. I don't know what I'm doing, Gabby. Part of me, a big part of me, wants to trust him completely, to believe that this is real, that he's staying. But there's always that voice in the back of my head, Sophia, remembering how easily he left before, how completely he disappeared. People change, Maria, Sophia said gently, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. And from what you've told me about his father, maybe he didn't exactly have a choice back then. Maybe he really did what he thought was best. Maybe, Maria whispered, the doubt lingering. But his world, Sophia, it's so different from ours. Private jets and global investors and corporate power struggles. Eventually, he'll remember that. He'll remember where he belongs. And this will just be a chapter in his life. While it's our whole story, the mystery of his true intentions, his ability to fully commit, still haunted her. The next morning, Maria arrived at work at the Grandview Hotel to find the lobby buzzing with whispers. Staff members gathered in small groups, their faces etched with a mixture of shock and concern. Her assistant rushed over, her face pale, handing Maria a business magazine. David Sterling's face was on the cover, his usual controlled smile replaced by a stern, unyielding gaze. It just hit the newsstands, Ms. Rodriguez, her assistant whispered, her voice trembling. There are reporters outside, asking questions. About you, and Isabella. Maria's blood ran cold as she looked at the headline, the words jumping out at her, cruel and sensational. Sterling heir distracted by secret daughter. Board questions CEO's judgment as stock prices fall. The article featured paparazzi photos, clearly taken from a distance, of the three of them at the Summit Lodge site, David, Maria, and Isabella. Isabella's face was mercifully blurred, but her distinctive blue eyes, her dark curls, the way she clung to David's hand. She was instantly recognizable to anyone who knew her. The article painted a malicious picture, claiming an anonymous source within the Sterling Hotel Group alleged David was being manipulated by a former fling and her secret child, threatening the company's crucial expansion plans. The language was vicious, portraying Maria as a gold digger, Isabella as a complication, and David as a once brilliant businessman losing his edge due to sentimentality. Maria's phone rang in her pocket, the school's number on the caller ID. Her heart sank. They knew. Isabella knew. By the time Maria arrived at Isabella's school to pick her up, her daughter was red-eyed. Her small face crumpled with confusion and hurt, surrounded by whispering classmates. Is David really my dad, Mom? Isabella demanded as they walked towards the car, her voice trembling, tears streaming down her face. Zoe said her mom read it in a magazine. She said he's super rich, and we're just trying to take his money. Isabella, honey, it's complicated. Maria started, trying to shield her daughter from the photographers swarming the school gates, their cameras flashing relentlessly. Is he or isn't he, Mom? Isabella persisted, her voice rising. Those striking blue eyes, so like David's, filled with a raw, heartbreaking pain that mirrored Maria's own. Before Maria could answer, David's car pulled up beside them, the powerful vehicle a stark symbol of the world that had just collided with theirs. He jumped out, his face ashen, his eyes filled with a mixture of fury and despair. Maria, Isabella, I'm so sorry about this, he said, his voice rough, reaching for them both. I had no idea. I never wanted. You lied to me. Isabella cut him off, her voice a heartbroken wail, backing away from them both as if they were strangers, betrayers. Both of you. You said he lived far away. You never told me the truth. Sweetheart, we were going to tell you. Maria began, tears streaming down her own face now, reaching for her daughter, who flinched away. When the time was right, when we figured things out. When? Isabella sobbed, her small body shaking. When I'm grown up. When he leaves again. Like the magazine says. Isabella backed further away from them both, her eyes wide with accusation and pain, a gulf opening between them. David knelt down slowly, his heart aching, extending a hand towards his daughter, who shrank away from his touch. "Isabella, listen to me. Please," David pleaded, his voice trembling. "I didn't know about you until I came back to Chicago. If I had known, if I had had any idea you existed, nothing, absolutely nothing in the world, would have kept me away from you. Not my father, not my work, nothing. But you did stay away," Isabella cried, the raw hurt in her voice tearing at his soul. "For my whole life. You weren't there. That's not fair, Isabella," Maria interjected, stepping forward, trying to shield her daughter from the cruel truth, though it was already out there, exposed for the world to see. "There were complicated adult reasons. Your grandfather—" "Stop saying complicated," Isabella shouted, her voice thick with tears and frustration. "It's not complicated. He didn't want us. That's why he left. That's why he wasn't here." Alexander looked stricken, the accusation like a physical blow. "That's not true, Isabella. I wanted you more than anything. I wanted to be here. Then why is your brother trying to pay Mom to take me away?" Isabella demanded, the question clearly overheard, hitting Maria with the force of a lightning strike. Maria gasped, her eyes wide with horror. "What? Isabella, you heard Marcus? He offered me money. I heard him at the hotel," Isabella admitted, her voice quieter now, the pain overwhelming the anger. "He offered Mom money to move away, so you could go back to your real life without us." David's expression turned from shock to absolute fury, his face contorted with rage. "Marcus did what?" Before he could say more, before he could unleash the torrent of his anger, reporters descended upon them, cameras flashing, microphones shoved in their faces, questions shouted from all directions. Maria grabbed Isabella, shielding her daughter's face with her body as they rushed towards their car, the paparazzi swarming them like a pack of wolves. "I'll handle this," David called after them, his voice rough with a promise, a threat. "Please, go to the Summit Lodge. Go there. Wait for me. It's safe." Instead, her mind reeling, her heart breaking for Isabella, Maria drove straight to Sophia's apartment. "We need a place to stay tonight, Gabby," she explained, her voice trembling, as Isabella, exhausted from crying, disappeared into Sophia's spare bedroom. "Maria, what happened?" Sophia asked, her face etched with concern. Maria showed her the crumpled magazine, the cruel headline, the invasive photos. "This happened, Sophia. And apparently, Marcus offered me $2 million to disappear, which I refused, but Isabella overheard. She knows everything now. Or, she thinks she knows." She fought back tears, the pain and despair overwhelming her. "This is exactly what I was afraid of, Sophia. His world colliding with ours. And Isabella, caught in the crossfire. Hurt." Her phone vibrated constantly with messages from David, desperate calls, pleas for her to answer, to talk to him. But Maria couldn't face him yet, not until she figured out what to do next, how to protect Isabella from the inevitable fallout. "Chicago offered me that regional director position last month," she said quietly, the offer she had put on hold for David, for the Summit Lodge, for the fragile hope of a future together. Maybe it would be better for Isabella if we just had a fresh start somewhere else. Away from all of this. Sophia squeezed her hand, her gaze gentle but firm. "Don't make decisions when you're upset, Maria. And don't run away before you hear his side of the story. Not the version the magazine wrote, not the version Marcus wants you to believe. His side." But as Maria watched Isabella sleeping fitfully on the narrow bed that night, tears still staining her cheeks, she couldn't help feeling that history was repeating itself. The Sterling family, once again, tearing her world apart, and herself, once again, left to pick up the pieces alone. The mystery of their future felt darker than ever. "I'm not taking calls from David Sterling," Maria told the front desk clerk at Sophia's apartment building the next morning, her voice tired but resolute. "Not today. Not tomorrow. Maybe not ever." For days had passed since the magazine article had exploded their fragile peace, since Isabella's heartbreak had shattered the careful world Maria had built. Maria's phone had been ringing constantly with David's calls and messages, all unanswered. He had left voicemails, sent pleading texts, but Maria had needed space, time to process, to figure out how to help Isabella navigate this new, painful reality. "He's been in the lobby for hours, Ms. Rodriguez," the clerk whispered, looking uncomfortable. "Says he won't leave until he speaks with you." Maria sighed, the sheer persistence of it wearing her down. Tell him I'll come down, but only for 5 minutes, and only here in the lobby." In the lobby, David looked like he hadn't slept in days. His face was unshaven, his normally immaculate suit wrinkled and disheveled. He looked less like a billionaire CEO and more like a man who had lost everything. "You're avoiding me, Maria," he said when she approached, his voice rough with fatigue and desperation. "I'm protecting my daughter, David," Maria countered, her voice sharp. "She's devastated, confused and hurt and publicly humiliated. I never meant for her to find out about you this way, David. Never. But she did. And now her classmates are calling her the secret daughter of David Sterling. This is exactly why I was cautious, David. This is exactly why I was terrified about letting you into our lives. This is your world, not hers." David ran a trembling hand through his disheveled hair, his blue eyes filled with anguish. "I confronted Marcus, Maria, as soon as I left you. It got physical. I haven't spoken to him since." "What?" Maria asked, shocked by the admission. "He admitted it, Maria," David said, his voice hard, cold now. "He admitted planting the story, leaking the photos, trying to force my hand. He thought if the board lost confidence in me, if the scandal was big enough, I'd abandon the Summit Lodge project, cut ties with you and Isabella, and return to London to fix the company's image. He used my daughter as a pawn, Maria, for profit margins." David's voice was low, dangerous now. "I fired him. On the spot." You fired your brother?" Maria stared at him, stunned. "He tried to destroy my relationship with my daughter for profit margins, Maria." David's voice rose slightly, laced with righteous fury. "What would you have done?" Maria sat down heavily on a nearby sofa, the weight of everything crushing her. "This isn't our world, David. Isabella and we don't belong in business magazines and corporate power struggles and family betrayals. We're quiet. We're simple. We built a life away from all that." "Maria, please," David said, dropping to his knees before her on the cold marble floor, his gaze pleading. "I can fix this. I swear, I can fix this." "How, David?" Maria's voice was filled with despair. "The story is out there. Forever. Isabella knows you're her father, but she found out in the worst possible way, from a cruel magazine headline. The damage is done. Let me talk to her, Maria," David begged, reaching for her hand, which she instinctively pulled away. "Let me explain my side. Let me tell her the truth, my truth." "She's not ready, David," Maria said, standing up, putting distance between them again. "She's heartbroken, confused. She needs time to process this, time to heal. And I need you to respect that." She looked at him, her expression resolute. "Are you coming back to work at the Summit Lodge, David? To the project?" David looked up at her, his expression hopeful. "Yes, of course. More than anything." "I don't know, David," Maria admitted, the words tearing at her heart. But she had to consider Isabella's well-being above all else. "Chicago offered me that position again last month. Maybe it would be better for Isabella if we just had a fresh start somewhere else. Away from all of this. Away from the Sterling name, the scandals, the expectations." David's face drained of color, his eyes wide with panic. The thought of losing Isabella now, after just finding her unbearable. "You'd take her away from me, Maria? Now? After everything? After I've just found her? I'm trying to do what's best for her, David," Maria countered, her voice thick with tears. "What's best for Isabella? And what about the Summit Lodge, Maria? Our project? Our future? David pleaded, gesturing wildly, his voice breaking. It was supposed to be our home. It was never really our project, David, Maria said, her voice sharp with pain and lingering resentment. It was your dream, your way of making up for the past. And I just got caught up in it. In you. Maria turned to leave, walking quickly towards the elevators, needing to escape, needing to think, needing to breathe. Maria! David called after her, his voice raw with despair, breaking, pleading. Please don't disappear. Not again. She paused at the elevators, her back to him, her shoulders slumped, a small, tired figure in the vast, silent lobby. She didn't turn back. I won't make any decisions about Chicago without telling you, David. That's all I can promise right now. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside, leaving David kneeling alone on the marble floor, the silence of the lobby amplifying the sound of his broken heart. The mystery of their future hung precariously in the balance. Couple of months passed. Maria took a leave of absence from work at the Grandview, focusing all her energy on helping Isabella navigate her new, complicated reality. They talked, they cried, they read stories about families who found each other in unexpected ways. David respected their space, sending only occasional, hesitant texts asking about Isabella's well-being, about her school, her building projects. He didn't push, didn't demand, giving them the time and space Maria had asked for. Meanwhile, construction at the Summit Lodge continued without Maria's daily input. David threw himself into the project, personally overseeing every detail, his dedication fueled by a fierce, desperate hope. When blueprints required changes, when design decisions needed to be made, he incorporated elements that reminded him specifically of Maria and Isabella, a cozy reading nook with the same dimensions as Isabella's bedroom, a garden featuring Maria's favorite coastal flowers, a large, open kitchen designed for a family who loved to cook together. He was building not just a lodge, but a physical manifestation of the life he hoped they could still have. One night, as a fierce autumn storm battered the coast, wind howling, rain pounding against the windows, David worked alone at the Summit Lodge site, reviewing plans by the flickering lamplight of a generator, the vast, empty building echoing around him. The sound of the front door opening startled him, the screech of hinges cutting through the storm's roar. He looked up, stunned, and froze. Isabella stood in the entrance, soaking wet, her small body trembling, her backpack clutched tightly to her chest. Her blue eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and determination, searched his face in the dim light. Isabella! David rushed towards her, his heart pounding, wrapping his arms around her small, cold body. Isabella! What are you doing here? Where's your mother? Are you alone? I ran away, Dad, Isabella admitted, her voice small, muffled against his coat. Mom thinks I'm at a sleepover at Sophia's. David grabbed a blanket from a nearby supply box, wrapping it around her shoulders, guiding her to a chair. Why would you do that, sweetheart? And during a storm? It's dangerous. I wanted to see the Summit Lodge, Isabella said, looking around at the half-finished lobby, the exposed beams, the dust motes dancing in the lamplight. To see if you were still building it, without us. David's heart clenched, the raw vulnerability of her words cutting him to the core. Of course I am, Isabella. I told you, this is our project. I made a promise. To you. To your mom. Mom's packing boxes. Dad? Isabella blurted out, the words tumbling out in a rush. She thinks I don't know, but I found the Chicago job offer papers in her desk. She's going to take me away. David guided her to a chair, sitting beside her, pulling her close. He had to call Maria. She must be frantic. Isabella, I need to call your mother. She must be worried sick. She's probably already called Sophia. Not yet, Dad, Isabella pleaded, clinging to him. Please? She'll be mad at me for running away. And I need to ask you something first. Her blue eyes, his eyes, searched his face, wide and serious, filled with the lingering pain and confusion of the past months. Dad, did you know about me? Before you came to Chicago? Did you know you were my dad? David's heart ached with the pain he had caused her, the years of unintentional absence. He knelt before her, taking her small hands in his voice thick with emotion, with absolute sincerity. No, Isabella, I swear to you I didn't know. If I had known about you, sweetheart, if I had had any idea you existed, nothing in this world. Not oceans, not my father, not my work, nothing would have kept me away from you. I would have been here, every single day. Then why did you leave, Mom? Isabella asked, the question simple, direct, cutting through all the adult complications. David sat beside her, pulling the blanket tighter around her, choosing his words carefully, explaining the impossible choice he had been forced to make, the manipulation that had separated them. Your grandfather, Isabella, my father, he threatened to hurt your mother's family, to ruin their business, to take away everything she cared about if I stayed with her. He gave me an impossible choice, Isabella. Leave her, or watch her world be destroyed. He looked at her directly, his eyes filled with regret and pain. I honestly thought I was protecting her by leaving, by disappearing. That's horrible, Isabella whispered, her voice small, her eyes wide with understanding. It was, David agreed, his voice raw with the lingering pain of that betrayal. And it was the biggest mistake of my life, Isabella, the biggest regret. I missed watching you grow up. I missed your first steps, your first words, your first day of school. All of it. I would give all my hotels, all my money, everything I've ever built, to have those years back. Isabella was quiet for a moment, processing the weight of his confession, the hidden truth behind the years of absence. Is that why you built this place, Dad? She asked softly, looking around the dusty, storm-battered lodge. The Summit Lodge? To make up for leaving. Partly, Isabella, David admitted, his heart swelling with love for this wise little girl. Partly to make up for the time I lost. But also because I want to build something permanent here, Isabella. Something that means I'm staying. For good. A place where we can be a family. Together. The storm outside intensified, wind howling around the old building, rain pounding against the windows like 1,000 tiny fists. David's phone rang, the caller ID flashing Maria's name. Maria, he said, his voice filled with relief and concern. David, her voice was frantic, filled with panic. Isabella? Is she with you? She's not at Sophia's house. She's gone. She's here at the Summit Lodge, Maria, David said quickly, reassuring her. She's safe. She's right here with me. He handed the phone to Isabella. I'm sorry, Mom, Isabella said tearfully into the phone, her voice trembling. I just wanted to see. A sudden, violent crash of thunder cut her off as the lights in the lodge flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. In the sudden, inky blackness, David took the phone back. Maria, are you there? The power's gone out. The storm's getting worse. It's not safe to drive. I'm coming to get her, David, Maria said immediately, her voice unwavering despite the storm. No, it's not safe to drive in this, Maria, David insisted, looking out at the raging storm, the wind tearing through the trees, the rain a solid curtain. The mountain road might be flooded, there could be fallen trees. We'll stay here tonight. There's a generator, emergency supplies. We'll be safe here. Promise. I'll keep her safe. An hour later, headlights cut through the darkness outside the Summit Lodge, a beacon of light in the storm. David opened the heavy door to find Maria standing there, drenched and frantic, her face pale with worry. Where is she, David? Maria demanded, pushing past him, her eyes scanning the dimly lit lobby. Asleep? David said, helping her out of her wet coat, his gaze filled with admiration and love. In the manager's office. There's a couch in there. You shouldn't have driven in this, Maria, he said gently, his voice filled with concern. It was dangerous. She's my daughter, David, Maria said, as if that single sentence explained everything, which to David it did. He finally understood the depth of a mother's love, a love that defied logic, that risked everything. Our daughter, he corrected gently, his gaze unwavering, a silent promise of a shared future. Maria's initial anger deflated as exhaustion and relief took over. She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. I was so scared, David. So scared when I couldn't find her. I didn't know where she would go. She found out about Chicago, Maria? David said quietly, sitting across from her, the storm raging outside mirroring the turmoil they had both endured. That's why she came here. She was afraid you were leaving, and that I wasn't building this for us. Maria looked up, her dark eyes filled with pain. I haven't decided about Chicago, David. I was just exploring options, trying to figure out what was best for her. Options that take Isabella away from me, Maria? David said, the raw fear evident in his voice. Options that protect her from exactly what happened, David. Maria countered, her voice rising, gesturing to the storm-darkened building, a symbol of their chaotic, complicated life. Protect her from becoming tabloid fodder in your world, from being a pawn in your family's power struggles. Alexander sat across from her, taking her hands in his. Maria, please, I think it's time I told you everything, the complete truth, about why I left Boston 9 years ago, not just the part my father wanted you to believe. As the storm raged outside, a cleansing force against the old building, David revealed the final pieces of his past, the intricate details of his father's manipulation, the heart attack, being a lie to get him to Washington, D.C., his years building hotels across Asia while hiring private investigators to search for her, the frustrating dead ends because Maria had moved cities frequently and even changed her name briefly after Isabella's birth, using her mother's maiden name to avoid being found by Howard's people. By the time I built enough success, enough independence, to finally break free from my father's influence, the trail was cold, Maria. David finished, his voice rough with the pain of years of searching in vain. I never stopped looking for you, not for one day. Maria wiped away tears, the truth of his words finally reaching her, dismantling the decade-long belief that he had simply chosen his empire over her. All these years, I thought you'd chosen your family's empire over us, that I wasn't worth fighting for. I was trying to create something worthy of you, Maria, David admitted, his voice filled with love and regret. Something that would make you proud when I finally found you again. Something to build a future on. Here, with you, with Isabella. Outside, the wind began to subside, the heavy rain easing to a steady drizzle as the storm passed over, leaving behind a fragile calm. In the manager's office, sheltered within the strong stone walls of the Summit Lodge, Isabella slept peacefully, unaware of her parents' quiet reconciliation in the shelter of the building that was meant to bring them all home. The mystery of David's disappearance was finally solved, paving the way for a new beginning. 1 month later, sunlight glinted off the newly restored windows as David stood at the entrance of the Summit Lodge, nervously straightening his tie as guests began to arrive for the grand opening celebration. The old, abandoned hotel had been completely transformed, its historic charm meticulously preserved, while modern luxury elements brightened every corner. It was a masterpiece, a testament to vision, dedication, and a shared passion. Though Maria had returned to work part-time as a consultant for the project, her professional distance remained, still uncertain about their future, about the possibility of truly blending their lives. Quite the achievement, son. The voice behind him made David stiffen, a familiar wave of tension rising. Howard Sterling stood leaning on a cane, thinner than David remembered, his face etched with age and something that looked surprisingly like vulnerability. Edward stood at his side, his expression unreadable. Father, David said, his tone cool, acknowledging his brother with a brief nod. Edward, you've been dodging my calls, Alex? Howard said, his voice gruff. Thought it was time for a face-to-face. See this, Summit Lodge? For myself. Edward stepped forward, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Was it regret? respect. I'm here to apologize, Alex. Truly. What I did, leaking that story, it was wrong. Desperate. David's expression remained guarded. The pain of the past months too raw to forgive easily. You tried to separate me from my daughter, Edward, for profit margins. I was protecting the company, Marcus insisted, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. Father was losing confidence. The board was restless. He gestured at the summit lodge around them. But I was wrong. Seeing what you've built here. This isn't just another hotel in the portfolio, Alex. This means something. It has heart. Howard tapped his cane impatiently, his gaze sweeping over the arriving guests. Where are they? Elena and the girl. Maria, David corrected firmly, his voice unwavering. Her name is Maria, and her name is Isabella. My daughter, not the girl. Howard studied his son for a long moment, then sighed. I'd like to meet my granddaughter, Alexander. David studied his father's face, searching for signs of the manipulative businessman who had torn his life apart 9 years ago. Instead, he saw only an aging man, visibly frail, with a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. That's not up to me, father, David replied, his voice firm. It's Maria's decision, and Isabella's. Across the lobby, Maria was showing the event coordinator final details when she spotted the Sterling family reunion. Her heart raced as she recognized Howard Sterling, the man who had told her David wanted nothing to do with her or their unborn child. Isabella appeared at her side, radiant in a new blue dress that matched her eyes, the dress Maria had bought for this special night. Is that my grandfather, Mom? Isabella asked, following Maria's gaze to where David stood with his father and brother. Yes, sweetheart, Maria admitted, her voice quiet. That's Howard Sterling. She knelt down to Isabella's level. But you don't have to meet him if you don't want to, Isabella. It's completely up to you. Isabella considered this, her brow furrowed in thought, her gaze fixed on the man who represented so much pain, so much mystery, in their lives. Is he the one who made my dad go away, Mom? It was a simple question, direct and painful. It was complicated, Isabella, Maria said carefully, using the word Isabella hated. Grown-ups always say that, Isabella replied, her voice small, wise. When they don't want to tell the truth. She squared her small shoulders, a determined glint in her blue eyes that was pure Sterling. I want to meet him, Mom. I want to ask him why. Before Maria could stop her, Isabella walked across the lobby directly to the group of Sterling men. David's face lit up at her approach, then filled with concern as he realized her destination. Hello? Isabella said formally, extending her hand to Howard Sterling, just as she had to David that first day. I'm Isabella Rodriguez. I'm your granddaughter. Howard seemed momentarily stunned by the child's directness, her confidence. He slowly bent down to her level, visibly wincing from the effort, his gaze fixed on her face. You have the Sterling eyes, he said gruffly, a hint of awe in his voice. Just like your father's. I know, Isabella replied, regarding him seriously. My mum says they're my best feature. And Dad says I get them from him, the part that builds things. Maria hurried over, placing protective hands on Isabella's shoulders. Mr. Sterling, she said coolly, her gaze challenging Howard. Ms. Rodriguez. Howard nodded, his gaze assessing her, acknowledging her strength. Your daughter is quite direct. She knows her mind, Mr. Sterling, Maria replied, her voice firm. Something I've encouraged. Howard straightened with difficulty, his gaze sweeping over Maria, then David, then settling back on Isabella. I've made many mistakes in my life, he said, his voice raspy with age and perhaps regret. Separating my son from you and Isabella was perhaps my greatest. He looked between them, his expression heavy with the weight of his past actions. I'm not asking for forgiveness, merely a chance to make amends. Whatever time I have left. What does that mean? David asked sharply, instantly wary, searching for the manipulation he expected. Edward answered quietly, his gaze fixed on his father, a sadness in his eyes. Father's cancer has returned, Alex. The treatments, they aren't working this time. A tense silence fell over the group, the grand opening celebration momentarily forgotten, broken only when Isabella spoke, her small voice filled with a simple, innocent concern that cut through the complex adult emotions. If you're sick, you should sit down, Grandpa. Mum says it's important to rest when you're not feeling well. Howard's weathered face softened, a genuine smile touching his lips. Wise advice, Isabella. Very wise. As Maria gently guided Isabella away to greet other arriving guests, giving the Sterling men a moment, David confronted his father, the years of pain and betrayal surfacing. Is this some kind of manipulation, Father? A deathbed reconciliation to ease your conscience? Getting back into my life now? Just because you're facing mortality? I deserve your skepticism, Alexander, Howard acknowledged, his voice raspy. More than you know. But sometimes facing mortality clarifies what truly matters. What you regret most. What you wish you could fix. The mystery of his father's motives was still unclear, but something in his eyes seemed different. The grand opening celebration continued as twilight fell over the coast. The Summit Lodge, bathed in soft golden light spilling from every window, lived up to its name, a beacon beckoning visitors along the darkening shoreline. David found himself on the balcony overlooking the sea, momentarily escaping the crowds, the weight of the evening. It's beautiful, David, Maria said, joining him at the railing, her voice soft. You've created something special here. We created it, Maria, David corrected gently, taking her hand. Every best idea came from you. Your vision, your practicality. You made it real. You made it better than I ever imagined. Maria smiled faintly, her gaze fixed on the glittering ocean. I've decided not to take the Chicago position, David. David's heart leaped, a surge of hope washing over him. You're staying? You're staying in Chicago. Isabella deserves to know her father. David? Maria said, turning to face him, her voice steady. Her whole family, even the complicated parts. She looked back towards the party, where Isabella was showing Howard her architectural sketches, the aging billionaire bending low to listen intently, a genuine smile on his face. Your father. He seems genuinely interested in her, David. He's a difficult man to trust, Maria, David warned, the pain in his voice raw. I know that better than most. Maria turned to face him fully, her eyes filled with a quiet conviction. But people can change, David. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen with you. Later that evening, as most guests departed, leaving only family and close associates, Howard approached the podium set up for speeches, his presence commanding the remaining crowd's attention. I wasn't invited to speak tonight, Howard began wryly, his voice raspy. And my son would probably prefer I didn't. But as the senior Sterling, I have an announcement. David moved protectively closer to Maria and Isabella, unsure what his father was planning. The Sterling Hotel Group has been my life's work, Howard continued, his voice stronger now. Built through determination, sometimes at great personal cost. His eyes found David in the crowd, a profound regret in his gaze. And sometimes, at too great a cost to others. He gestured around the Summit Lodge, encompassing the transformed building, the gathered family. This property, it represents a new vision for our company. One focused not just on luxury and profit, but on community and family. He paused, gathering strength, taking a visible breath. As I step back from active management, I'm establishing the Sterling Foundation for Community Development, with an initial endowment of $50 million. Murmurs rippled through the audience. This was unexpected. This foundation needs leadership, Howard continued, his gaze settling on Maria, a woman who had built a successful career while raising an exceptional child alone, a woman of strength and integrity. From someone who understands both business excellence and community needs. Someone who understands what it truly means to build something meaningful from the ground up. He looked directly at Maria, Miss Maria Rodriguez, I'm offering you the position of Chief Executive Officer. Maria gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, stunned. David looked equally shocked. Edward, standing near his father, nodded in quiet agreement, a newfound respect in his eyes as he looked at Maria. Father, you can't just... David began, utterly surprised by his father's sudden, unexpected move. I can, and I have, Alexander, Howard interrupted, a flicker of his old power returning. But it was directed towards a new purpose. Unless, of course, Miss Rodriguez isn't interested. All eyes turned to Maria, who stood frozen in disbelief. The weight of the offer, the implications for her life, for Isabella's life, overwhelming her. You don't have to answer now, Howard added, his voice softer, kinder. But I hope you'll consider it. He looked at Isabella, who was watching with wide eyes, with genuine affection. Sometimes we find family in unexpected places, and sometimes we need to be reminded of what truly matters. After the announcement, guests dispersed quickly, leaving the Sterling family, David, Maria, Isabella, Howard, and Edward, to process the evening's surprising turn. Isabella had fallen asleep on a lobby sofa, exhausted from the excitement, her head resting on her stuffed airplane model. David found Maria on the Summit Lodge observation deck, staring out at the moonlit ocean, the lighthouse beams sweeping across the water in the distance. I had no idea my father was planning that, Maria, he said, joining her at the railing, the shock still evident in his voice. I believe you, David, Maria replied, her voice quiet. It's overwhelming. You'd be brilliant at it, David said sincerely, watching her, seeing the strength and capability in her. The woman who had raised their daughter alone, who had built her own career against the odds. But you don't have to accept because you feel obligated. It's your choice, Maria. Is this how your world always works, David? Maria asked, a hint of disbelief in her voice. Sudden, life-changing offers and dramatic family moments? Unraveling secrets and impossible choices. David laughed softly, the sound easy and genuine, a stark contrast to the tension of the evening. Pretty much, Maria. You get used to it. I'm not sure I want to, Maria said, turning to face him, her expression serious, her dark eyes searching his. David, what are we doing? This past year, it's been a whirlwind. You returning, discovering Isabella, the Summit Lodge project, the scandal, the reconciliation, now this foundation. Where does it end? Instead of answering immediately, David reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, worn velvet box. Maria stared at it, her heart pounding, 1,000 possibilities flashing through her mind. I've carried this since the day I left Boston. Chicago? 9 years ago, Maria, he said, his voice low and emotional, opening the box to reveal a vintage sapphire ring, the stone a deep, brilliant blue. I was going to propose to you the weekend I was called to Washington, D.C. Maria stared at the ring, then at David's face, her eyes welling up with tears. Alexander, I'm not proposing now, Maria, he said quickly, gently, closing the box but keeping it in his palm, pressing it against his heart. Not like this, not yet, but I want you to know that through everything, every hotel built, every city conquered, every year we were apart, I never stopped loving you, not for one day. I never stopped hoping I'd find my way back to you, to both of you. And now, Maria whispered, her voice trembling, the possibility of a future she had never dared to believe in suddenly feeling real. Now I'm building something more important than hotels, Maria, David said, gesturing to the coastline beyond the Summit Lodge, bathed in the soft moonlight. See that point of land beyond the lodge? I bought that land too. I've been designing a home there. Permanent one. Room for 3. Maybe more someday. A home. Maria repeated softly, the word resonating deep within her soul. I spent years building hotels for strangers, Maria, David said, his voice filled with a profound truth. When all I really wanted was to build a home with you. Family. Here. At the Summit Lodge. guided by its light. The summit lodge beams swept across the water, illuminating the way forward, just as fireworks burst overhead, celebrating the lodge's opening night, painting the sky with brilliant colors. David took Maria's hand, the velvet box warm against her skin, and this time, she didn't pull away. Her fingers intertwined with his, a silent acceptance, a tentative step towards a shared future. "I'm not saying yes to everything at once, David," she cautioned gently, a small, hopeful smile on her face. "The foundation, living together, it's a lot to process, a very big step. Take all the time you need, Maria," David replied, his voice filled with love and patience. "I'm not going anywhere, not ever again. My home is here now, with you, with Isabella." As they watched the fireworks reflect on the ocean, painting the waves with light, Isabella appeared in the doorway of the observation deck, rubbing her sleepy eyes, her stuffed airplane tucked under her arm. David and Maria welcomed her between them, wrapping their arms around her. The three figures silhouetted against the night sky, a family constellation finally aligned after years of separation, guided home by the light of the summit lodge. The mystery was over, the future was beginning. 2 years had passed since the summit lodge's grand opening. The boutique hotel had quickly become the crown jewel of the Sterling Hotel Group, featured in travel magazines for its unique blend of historic charm and modern luxury. On this warm summer evening, the annual community celebration filled the lodge's private beach with laughter, music, and the happy shouts of children. David stood on the deck of their beautiful coastal home, nestled on the point of land beyond the summit lodge, watching the scene unfold below. Maria moved confidently through the crowd, greeting staff and guests with the natural warmth and grace that had made her such a successful CEO of the Sterling Foundation. In her first 2 years, she had already launched impactful housing initiatives, hospitality training programs, and community centers in 3 cities, with ambitious plans to expand nationally and internationally. She was a force for good, a true builder of communities, and David watched her with endless pride and love. "Dad, come look," Isabella called from the shoreline, pulling him back to the present. Now 10 years old, she had grown taller, her dark curls a little longer, but those distinctive blue eyes remained unchanged, the legacy that had first revealed their connection, the light that had guided him home. She was directing a team of younger children in building an elaborate sandcastle, her small hands covered in sand. As David joined them, kneeling beside her on the damp sand, he marveled at the detailed structure Isabella had engineered, complete with moats, bridges, and a miniature summit lodge perfectly proportioned. "The northeast tower keeps collapsing, Dad," Isabella explained seriously, her brow furrowed in concentration. "We need a better support system. Try diagonal reinforcements, Isabella," David suggested, his voice filled with pride, pointing to a section of the sandcastle. "Like we did on the Melbourne project." It was an example from a real development, one he'd worked on recently, incorporating her earlier design ideas. Maria approached, smiling at the familiar sight of father and daughter deep in architectural discussion. 2 brilliant minds, connected by blood and by a shared passion for building. "The Melbourne Hotel isn't even built yet, and you're already using it as a teaching moment, David?" she teased, her arm around his shoulders. "She's my best consultant, Maria," David replied, his voice warm, pulling her closer. "The design for the Children's Museum wing at the Chicago Community Center? That was entirely her idea." Isabella beamed with pride, wiping sand from her hands. She had adjusted remarkably well to the whirlwind of changes in their lives, a new home, a father who adored her, a mother who was a powerful CEO, and grandparents who spoiled her whenever possible. Even Edward had become a devoted, if sometimes awkward, uncle, bringing exotic souvenirs from his business travels and patiently listening to Isabella's elaborate design theories. "Speaking of consultants," Maria said, glancing towards the Summit Lodge deck where Howard was talking on his phone. His health stabilized with aggressive treatment, giving him precious time to know his granddaughter and make amends with his son. "Your father is looking for you, David. Something about the Singapore expansion plans." David nodded but didn't move immediately. He can wait, Maria, he said, putting an arm around her waist, pulling her against him. I promised my wife I'd be present tonight. Not talking business. Their wedding 8 months earlier had been an intimate, joyous affair right here on this very beach, with Isabella as their proud and honored attendant. The press had been kept far away, a lesson learned from past mistakes. David had scaled back his international work significantly, focusing on designing unique boutique hotels closer to home. Projects Maria would often manage remotely through the foundation, their skills and passions complementing each other perfectly. Mrs. Sterling, there's a call for you, a staff member interrupted apologetically, approaching them on the beach. The Chicago project director has questions about tomorrow's presentation. Tell him I'll call back in the morning, Maria decided instantly, her gaze meeting David's, a shared understanding passing between them. Family time is non-negotiable. David raised an eyebrow, a playful smile on his face. The workaholic Maria Rodriguez turning down a business call? Who are you and what have you done with my wife? I learned from my mistakes too, David, she replied, her eyes sparkling with love and conviction. Some things are much more important than work. As twilight descended, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, guests gathered near the Summit Lodge path for the annual lighting of the real Summit Light, a tradition David had started the previous year. Isabella ran ahead to join her grandfather, who waited with Edward near the path. 2 years, David mused, taking Maria's hand as they followed, walking side by side, their fingers intertwined. Sometimes I can hardly believe how much has changed. When you walked into the Grandview Hotel that day, David, Maria admitted, her voice soft, filled with remembrance. I was terrified. I was terrified you'd destroy the life I'd built, the quiet world I shared with Isabella. She squeezed his hand. I never ever imagined you'd make it so much fuller, so much brighter. At the Summit Lodge, Howard handed Isabella the ceremonial key. With David's help, she inserted it into the antique mechanism, and seconds later, the powerful beam of light swept across the darkening water, a symbol of safe harbor, of guidance, of homecoming. Fireworks erupted overhead, reflecting in the waves below and in the eyes of the gathered family, a celebration not just of the lodge, but of the life they had built together. David pulled both Maria and Isabella close, his arms wrapped around them, holding his world, his family, his purpose. He remembered the lonely, driven real estate developer who had walked into a Chicago hotel exactly 2.5 years ago, never expecting to find his heart waiting there, a heart he hadn't even known was lost. The best buildings aren't hotels, Isabella, he whispered to his daughter, his voice thick with emotion. They're families. And you, my brilliant architect, you helped build the strongest one I know. As the celebration continued around them, the Sterling family stood together in the warm glow of the Summit Lodge light, no longer separated by secrets or oceans or years of misunderstanding, but united by the clear, bright blue eyes of the little girl who had guided them all home, the unexpected architect of their second chance. What an incredible journey of love, loss, and second chances. Did this story move you? Let me know your favorite moment in the comments below. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.